Sometimes you do a video, right, where you want the result to be something. Like you want to be able to say, you know what, that's surely going to be how I think it's going to be, right? This is going to be a great... Anyway, what I was hoping would happen I'd buy this Gerber Principal, which I really like the look of. It's like, I think that's a very stylish, handsome looking knife, right? And then I've got the Mora Garberg, which, I've had Garbergs before. I feel positive about the Garberg, but I don't love it. And I was thinking, you know what? It's a bit smaller, but it's about the same price. This could be as good as the Garberg. This could be like an alternative. It could be a really interesting video comparing the two of them. So I started off a series of comparisons with like how it feels in the hand, and I did one of my rope tests and I checked out the sheaths and all that sort of thing. Anyway, stick with me. We're going to compare the Gerber Principal to the Mora Garberg. This is a grimace, not a smile. Okay, so these knives are both about 150 bucks. You can pay a little bit more or less with the Garberg and get a bit more or less on your sheath, or you can get a leather sheath for a fair bit more or whatever. This guy's about 150 bucks with its multi-mount style sheath, this guy here. So let's just do a direct comparison between the two blades. You're getting 420 HC, you're getting Mora's recycled stainless steel, which is either going to be 14C28N, 13C27, maybe a mix of both. I don't know. They're no longer clear about it, right? It's just called stainless recycled steel or recycled stainless steel. You're getting, similar-ish quality in sheath. You're getting like basic, hard plastic, pretty rudimentary sheath from Mora. This one's got the bit of extra fire steel and sharpener on it. And Gerber, you're getting this really cool multi-mount sheath. I like Gerber's sheaths. They usually do a pretty nifty idea where this one here kind of comes apart. You can sort of rebuild it however you want. Like you can have it, you drop it down a little bit, which is cool, so it's lower. You can put it on this side clip here so you can carry it scout style. Pretty cool. I like that a whole lot as well. This is made in Gerber's American factory in Portland, and this is made in Sweden by Mora. Let's talk about, we'll talk about the steel in terms of edge retention first, right? So I did an edge retention test comparing these two knives. Basically new edges, and I cut twisted sisal rope until I no longer sliced a held sheet of paper when you hold it upright. And I was really happy to see the Gerber here held its edge for 150 cuts of the rope, which is really good for 420HC on a Scandinavian grind. Like Scandi grinds, they are very acute, and basically it's just one big 15-degree edge. It has been stropped, you can see it's got an extra bit of shine that they must do at the factory, but basically it's a 15-degree edge up until the stock thickness. Very acute. It was cool to see it hold its edge for that long. Sometimes they just fold over. Sometimes they dull really quickly. And the Mora, in the end, did 175 cuts. So it wasn't a great deal difference between the two of these knives. It was a bit like, my conclusion was almost going to be, oh cool, well this is basically going to be a similar steel performance-wise to the Mora. So cool, and that was like something I was really happy to see. Luckily, I put a pin in it and continued to test the blades. Handles, let's talk about the handles. So the handle on the Gerber is, in the immediate grip, like in the instant, actually a nicer handle in the hand. Like it's got a really kind of warm, tactile, rubbery feeling to it, which isn't sticky rubber, but it's sort of just nice. It stops your finger just for a second when you slide it across it. Really, really comfortable handle. And I must also admit, I love the looks of this knife. I think it looks really, really nice too. So for a longer term grip, it's, a bit wanting, but for a short term grip, picking it up, using it for a few cuts, it's absolutely fine. The Garberg, on the other hand, to me, initially, I always found this a bit of a hard and industrial feeling handle. Its barrel shape is, very, very, very versatile. And so when you do your short-term cutting, it's not as nice, not as warm immediately, but when you go into your longer-term cutting, the types where you need to move and maneuver your hand around the steel and that sort of thing, it's, a little bit less fatiguing over sort of a 10-minute whittling session, for example, than this guy here. This guy has some voids in your grip that will reveal itself as the knife kind of moves around your hand that can somewhat cause, I wouldn't say outright discomfort, but it's just a little bit less comfort than the Garberg does over a longer period of time, right? So whilst not a bad handle, I would give the slight edge to the Garberg. So for keeping score at the moment, it's for edge retention, they're about the same. I'd give both of these steels, a pretty general good rating for edge retention for this price of knife, knowing what I know about the steels. And then for handles, I would give the slight edge in the longer term use to the Garberg, and still acknowledge that the Gerber's got a really nice handle, but over a longer use, maybe not as ultimately comfortable. Moving on to the spines, both of these knives have really nice sharp spines that you can use to throw sparks off of your ferro rod without a worry. They absolutely grind those sparks off and do a really, really good job of being little fire kit knives, for sure. In terms of the sheath, so the sheath, I like Gerber's idea. I like what they're going for. I find the execution just a little bit lacking in that when you put it all together, so I'll put it together in the most compact way possible, right? So you put your tab through the top, right? So that's, slid in, it's not coming off, like that's fitted together. This is like your scout style sheath. You'd ideally lock it on your belt like that, perhaps in the small of your back, pretend you bear grills for a day, look really, really cool, right? I like everything about it apart from two things. Very noisy. And I know when I'm out with my backpack on, I've got my drink bottle going clong, clong, clong against the carabiner, whatever, but this is like almost disconcertingly noisy. And it's the same with the belt loop on as well. The belt loop is kind of like a Mora style, slides over your belt and catches on sort of style sheath, which is cool, and I like that a lot, but rattly in both senses, which isn't the end of the world. The other thing that gives me some pause is that the knife is retained. It's not going to shake out, so I'm not going to say that it's falling out or anything silly like that, but goodness me, it comes out easy. Like there isn't a huge amount of detent to that. And I'm just thinking with a knife with a slight grip to it and with these holes in it, I could see stuff just happens. I could see a twig just going bloop and your knife's gone. And so that's not a problem for this style, but for scout style, which is I guess the selling point of the sheath, not as stoked, right? The Mora Garberg has a really, it's not an exciting sheath, but it's a super functional sheath, and in the knife goes, and it's absolutely fine. So there you are. So look, I'd give a slight edge against the Garberg and a slight, a tip of the hat at least to Gerber for trying something pretty cool, pretty modular. I would say probably for this kind of knife, a little leather sheath would have been probably more within the taste and spec and everything of the knife, but okay. I'd give it like a slightly less positive appraisal, but still overall a positive appraisal with those couple of caveats about the rattle and maybe the scout style. Just maybe keep an eye on it, just check on it every now and then, make sure it's still there, or carry it on the front, right? So I was going through this as a bit like, well, this is cool. Like this is something that's probably I'm not going to be able to say this knife is better than the Garberg, but I'm going to be able to say, you know what? For probably you pay slightly less for it, it's probably about as good a deal. That was the way I was going. And I was thinking, you know what? My plan is coming to fruition. I like Gerber's US stuff. I like it. This is good. This is like, this is nice. And then I went and did like a little bit of extra whittling with the knife. And this is just against like fat wood and against like kindling wood. So not super hard red gum or anything like that, just wood, right? And very unfortunately, whilst the, middling edge retention of the Mora recycled stainless, it's not the best, it's not the worst, but it's a very stable steel. And it's a steel that it will just dull and it won't do anything unusual. Unfortunately, it certainly appears that 420HC is not a very good steel for holding an acute edge like a Scandi grind requires. These edges are there's too much finery at the very sort of apex for 420HC to endure. And even in the most basic of like wood prep tasks, like the most like demonstrative of firewood shaving, this guy is getting some pretty bad rolls down towards the start of the blade. I just feel like for the 420HC, even though it does hold its edge well in like my very controlled sort of rope cutting example, I think I couldn't say for sure that if you're going to just use this knife for what I frankly think is its purpose for wood carving, I think this is going to cause you some despair or annoyance in terms of you're going to end up accumulating some rolls that are going to become bends, that are going to become, proper sharpening headaches down this end of the knife especially, because that's what I'm certainly looking at right now, unfortunately. I'll show you under the microscope what we're looking at, and there's just nothing else really for it. It's just a bit of a bummer that I was hoping that the 420 would be, a budget solid performer. And it is in the Gerber strong arm for sure, because that's holding a meaty lower V edge, which is looking more like it's something that'll flatten out because it's more broad. Whereas these tall Scandi style edges, they really need a steel with a level of, it's a type of toughness. Overall, I'm sure this knife you could probably lever and pry with it and everything, but it needs a toughness in thinness as well, which this has definitely got, but this one absolutely doesn't. So I'm bummed. I love how this knife looks. I love when you get a new good product from Gerber's factory. What they probably should do is just put it in a flat grind or a saber grind with a V edge, a more typical V edge, and it will probably have a bit better luck against wood than these Scandi edges. A Scandi grind is no joke. Like, it can't just be in any steel. It needs to be in a steel that does well in a Scandi, and I'm afraid that the 420HC in this example, on this specific knife, maybe even whatever, just ain't it. Just ain't it. So, bummer. That's all I got. That's all I got. Sorry, Gerber. Sorry, whoever was hoping this, like me, would just be the perfect little alternative to these Moras, US made. The story was going to be great, but the reality, unfortunately, I can't endorse it as a little wood shaving, wood crafting knife, because I frankly have not put this through much more than the first preliminary tests. And it's already starting to let me down just a little bit. So. So if you were curious, unfortunately the problem continues to replicate. I've done a pretty comprehensive resharpening of the knife as well. And just on that, if you are a stone sharpener, just be aware that these handles here actually kind of travel up pretty well into the blade path while it's on the stone. So you need to sort of sharpen it on a bit of an angle, like as in you need to turn the knife that way and up the stone like so. Just one other thing. But unfortunately, maybe it's just my wood, like maybe the wood that I use in Australia for firewood is just crazy hard. It just doesn't challenge any other knives. That's the only reason I'm kind of knocking it a bit, because no other knives I've really used have had this problem where they roll so easily, apart from one Spyderco Nalaka ages ago, which was a super tall, complete flat grind pretty much, and was just, crazy fragile. That's the only time this has ever happened before. So, and unfortunately with this stuff, it does unfortunately persist. So, just a bit of a bummer. And I think it's, at least on this knife here, this exact one, the steel, it ain't so good for this, this task. And also, I noticed I put it into my chopping board back there to take the thumbnail shot, and when I pulled it out, the tip had gone. So, I don't know. Yeah, it did all that. I was trying to, I was doing the tip test and it was fine, but then, I don't know. Just, it's a bit of a bummer. The whole thing's a bit of a miss. So just thought I'd chuck a little epilogue there for you, because yes, it does persist even after a bit of steel has been removed and it's been resharpened. So, sorry.